Somebody mentioned the other day that anything you turned at the demonstration we were supposed to bring in tonight. So anyway,
You're turning when you were.
yeah, this is what I was turning when you came along. It's just obviously old bull. I had realized I had to collect my stuff because I was supposed to be doing demo in half an hour or something like this. And I'm running around the basement looking for a piece of wood. And I have no idea where I got this cherry. Okay, and there it was. So it turned out to be smaller than I thought. The cherry actually had a fair bit of bark inclusion. And I guess if you're artistic, you like to keep the bark or something there and go with that. And I wasn't feeling artistic that day. The only thing that slightly annoys me is I thought I'd carefully sand it when I got home, and I thought I carefully sanded it, and after putting a coat of finish on, I see little scratches that I didn't see before. So I guess everybody's been there, right? So anyway, however, it feels nice if you don't look at it. It actually, you know. Anyway.
Turn the wall like a turn.
Yes, well, or just drop it once or twice, and then it's more likely to be.
Use this microphone.
You can, go ahead.
So I have my pieces here for that were in the competition. This is one that Gordon pointed out. The finish was, doesn't seem as finished on the inside, which is weird because it's got exactly the same number of coats, but it must be because of the grain that it absorbed the finish better. But the challenge was, I'd done a square bowl before, but or a square edge bowl before, but getting it to come through so that the edge here matches up with the edge here was the biggest trick. And when I first started finishing it, I can't remember whether it was on this side or this side, but I thought it was really beautifully sanded, and then put it on, and the scratches showed up, and I thought, said a few not very ladylike things, and then so I sanded it back and refinished it. So when he said, you know, you're rushing it, no, I didn't. I spent a lot of time trying to get it. I just didn't pick up that the shine wasn't there. A couple of the well, I don't think they put it in the comments, but Steve, I was talking to Stephen afterwards and telling him it was mine, and they didn't like this, but I do. One of them said I should have a second one. My partner suggested that. I didn't like that either. I just like the little, you know. Stephen said it should just sit. So, just goes to show you that even judges can be wrong. These were mine for the mandrel, and they actually came in second. The biggest challenge was getting the two of them to match, because, as I said to a couple of people, it's easy to get something with a nice shape, but getting two the same, and that's what I spent a lot of time. And to make things more complicated, the two kits came from two different places, so the inside holes are different, the type of join is different, and this one is actually round where it joins, and this one isn't, so I couldn't do it so it came up really tight to the edge, because then they wouldn't match. So,
Could you? Okay.
yes, Chris, I know.
Time for pizza.
Maybe so you can see the wood.
Well,
Without
no, I
cutting.
know. No, actually, it's because I want your head facing up,
My head facing up. Oh.
or facing the camera, I should say.
Some pizza to serve.
So,
Well, you're the editor if you don't like it.
that's right, I get to cut the pictures. I didn't know what kind of wood it was. I guessed cherry by the bark. The judges, two of them said oak.
No.
Nobody here seems to think it's oak. So,
Kinda looks like elm.
could be ash. It's from my backyard. So that limits it. But anyway, I had good fun, and as I say, the big challenge was getting the 2 parts cement, because I don't have a little contraption to give me exactly the things to make it match. So, that's,
Okay.
All right, the competition I did duck call as a mandrel item. Spalted maple that's been stabilized. It has some nice curl to it, and that got first in intermediate spindle, in intermediate mandrel. Pen done in again stabilized curly maple with a blue dye. It's raw aluminum casting on it. And then during my session here last Saturday, I managed to do 4 pens in 2 hours. And that's it.
Well, they decided to make a tree topper, and my main theme in the whole thing was that somebody quit saying my finish sucked. This was the first time I've gotten one that somebody said the finish was good, which has sort of been my goal more than anything else. And Diane, if all I did with mine was wet sanding.
with what?
Wet sanding.
Wet sanding.
So taking like a wax oil blend, and as you're sanding, sand with that, it fills all the pores right in and smooths it right up. And that's what this is the basics of Richard Rosen's topper design. But that was about it. The globe's done in 2 pieces, and yeah, the comment was made the feel's kind of chunky, but yeah, I'll get better at it, I hope. But that's about it.
Chunky as compared to what?
Anybody
Another
with-
finial?
Anybody with a better looking finial. Self-modeled it, you know?
In the demo theme, this is just a little bowl in Bacardi. It's a design that I came up with a few years ago that I like to call it a floating bowl. The idea was to try and make the bowl look as massive and heavy as it was, and yet have a deeply undercut base, so it actually looks like it's floating or hovering above the table surface that it's sitting on. This one, the undercut is a little steep, so you tend to see the foot when it's on the table, unless you're almost right above it. But that's the idea behind that. This started out as a tea light holder, and when I'd done the outside, and then Scott came by the lathe and he says, "What are you making?" I said, "I don't know, maybe a candle holder." And he said, "Well, I want to see a bowl before you're done." So it became a bowl.
You're not supposed to listen to Scott.
Well, he lets me use his lathe. This was a piece of what I originally thought was birch that was salvaged from a junkyard as an 8-foot length full of splits and knots, and I cut all the good pieces out. There was 3 or 4 of them that I found like that, and by the time I'd cut out all the pieces with nails and knots and everything, I wound up with about 30 nice 10 by 10 blanks, either 1.5 inch thick or 2 inch thick. The judges assure me it's beech, not birch. And so I've been following on YouTube Stuart Farini, who's an English wood turner who's very much into decorated rim platters and bowls using dyes and paints and a variety of things. So this started out, I turned the back and shaped it, then I painted the rim. It was dyed first with alcohol dye, nice dark purple color that I thought looked remarkably like Purple Heart. I almost didn't want to cover it up. But then went over it with a variety of iridescent and interference acrylic paints. Some people have asked how they were applied, and they were literally just thinned ever so slightly with water and then dabbed on randomly with a piece of sea sponge, a nice finely poured piece of sea sponge with small holes, not big ones, and then leave it until the next morning, see what it looked like, and decide, oh, that needs some more colors, and so back over to Michael's for pouring through the rack, looking for some more interesting paints, and back with 2 or 3 more and try those, and eventually got to something that I didn't really like, but decided that at least I could get this finished early first, in case I didn't get the other one finished in time. So this got finished on the Tuesday before the deadline, and so fortunately it did. This took first in the open faceplate category, so I was quite pleased and a little surprised by that, given that I didn't particularly like it. I had put a gold rim around the edge with a gold metallic Sharpie, and the coat of tung oil I put on over the final coat took most of the Sharpie ink off, so there's now only hints, there's suggestions of gold there, but so it may get a gold rim put back on.
Well, could you just hold up the camera?
It's over here.
Wow.
The other piece was a piece I've been thinking about for some time, and it's a piece of sapelli. It turns very similar to mahogany. It's fairly soft and takes a good finish. And I had wanted to do something with a Celtic design on the rim, again following the decorated rim idea on the platter. So I decided that the steps in the process would be to turn the back and remount that, then do the design on the rim, and then hollow out the bowl in the center. I really like pieces that have little surprises for people who pick them up and interact with them, so I did some pyrography on the back as well, just so that if somebody picks it up there is something there. That becomes important in the latter part of the story. One of the challenges I had was the time. The reason I finished the first piece first, because on Monday night I was trying to figure out, what do I do? Do I finish the piece I don't like, or do I plow on and maybe not finish the piece I want to do? And so working full-time and deadlines for turning competitions don't always work out. So every evening that week was spent down in the basement. There was 3 hours of burning in the lines, about 7.5 hours of filling in the background, and then on supper time Friday, it went on the lathe to get the bowl hollowed out.
Can you turn it to that camera so
Yeah.
we get a bit more?
There we go, now we can work it.
I was trying to make sure Chris got his shots. The
Oh, I see a scratch.
oh, don't worry. The judges let me know that there are some undulations in the bottom of the bowl that detract from the overall form.
Undulations.
Undulations, and there are. You can actually feel them. But by that point, it was like 9 o'clock Friday, and I needed time to get some finish on to get dry before it got brought in here.
It's a design feature.
A design feature, yeah. So, a couple of things I discovered. One is that when I had going to turn it around, I had put a small glue block on the back of it here. But I had to make it small because I didn't want the glue to get on the pyrography that was already there, and when it came off, potentially remove some of the charcoal that was there. Remember that image, because there's a story about that piece of the image that I didn't share yesterday. And so I've really been enjoying Richard's Nova Silk sanding paste. I used it a lot here on the demo table to control sanding dust in general. Even when I started at the larger grits, I was putting it on just to control the dust. It's wonderful. You get really thick little globs of sawdust wax mixture all through your hair as it comes off, but it doesn't at least drift all over the store. And when Richard was demonstrating how you finish it, he talked about using it to get that final nice smooth finish, and then applying an easy finish like his 2-minute finishes, which is what went on here. He also said that when you're finishing off the 2-minute finish, make sure the lathe is running good and high, and press really hard to make sure you get a good buff and a good smooth finish on that finish. what I didn't consider was what would happen with this spinning at about 1800 RPM with a very small glue block on the back of it as I pressed really hard and came out towards the edge. And the good Lord was smiling on me that night because it came off the glue block, and instead of going back behind the lathe, crashing into the studs and onto the floor, it climbed up my chest into my arm like this. But what I hadn't realized was that in leaving the lathe environs, that one of the jaws on the chuck had kissed the back of it and made a little vertical dent just inside the ring. So totally dismayed, I thought, what on earth am I going to do with that? And realized that I have the great fortune of having a surname that begins with a letter with a strong vertical line at the beginning. So you'll see that vertical line on the E is a little deeper than anything else. And that was my way of burying that little mark. And if you look carefully, it actually extends a little beyond the bottom of the E. But it was a way of getting rid of that little dent in the back.
Nicely done.
And then I got to cover up the whole thing with masking tape to conceal the identity anyway. And so the other thing I didn't mention yesterday, Saturday, but should have, that I certainly want to thank Harold McClellan, who helped to broker the sale of this piece during the show. He was approached while he was on the demo table asking if it was for sale, and got in touch with me, and we had a back and forth about, well, I don't know, I haven't thought about selling it. And so eventually, by late last week, we had confirmed a sale with a collector in Dartmouth. So quite pleased about a first sale other than through a donation for a charity auction. So.
I thought this would be a little bit of fun coming, from the flat workers to those people who actually turn on lathe. So this one, of course, got a little of each of those sorts of things. So I started playing around a while back with looking at some different designs for trying to do something of an owl design, and the two pieces that kind of really jumped out at me, and I had actually seen there's a British fellow by the name of Matt Pugh.
Slide
who
over
does-
and get yourself centered on the camera. Then
right,
we
here
can
we
see
go.
it. Oh, perfect. Thank you.
These are very similar to Matt Pugh's L's, with the exception of almost everything. I think the pieces that I did like from his was the idea of using the Forstner bit to create the eyes, and then having a little bit of fun about determining how I would get this nice even turn of the beak here and make it absolutely perfect if I could. It required creating some pretty interesting jigs that allow the thing to sit sort of at a 45 and then run through your bandsaw and then your sanding and that sort of thing. And then, of course, the piece, I wanted it to have a turned, a round bottom with a little foot on the bottom down there. So I knew I was going to have to turn it. It's kind of interesting. You can see where the where the point of the lathe was in, and of course on both sides. I was able to hide it on this side, so you can see that's where I put our little logo piece there. These were also done by Trevor, by the way. So, and I finally got smart enough after doing about 8 or 10 of them. I've got a few more now that I've done, and I realized that if I waited to do the beak and these other parts and actually just did all that shaping, I could just cut off that top piece and then lose the point here, right, sort of thing. So anyway, took a little while before I clued into that. The interesting thing is the way that I market it, perhaps. So it goes like this. It's Sunek, Dunek. No, that's not right. Sunk, Dunk, Sunek, Dunek. Everybody thinks this guy's totally lost it by this point in time. But you know what a dink is? Dual income, no kids. Well, this is single owl, no kids, sunk. Dual owl, no kids, there's a donk, right, and so on. So anyway, and I actually have them up on my website exactly that way, and people get so cool because all the different little family pieces that they can put together, but anyway, it was a bit of fun. So all the,
Is there some way you can hold up all three at once?
I think so. How's that? You get the whole family.
Okay.
All right, anyway, that's it. Bit of mahogany then, yeah.
Okay, we have Don has something to show us.
So, I was fortunate enough to receive some wood from Alain Morin, and this is pistachio wood. I don't have a program, but what I wanted to do with it, there's a few things why I brought it in, is Gordon was asking about the sheen and the shine and using matte colors and that. Well, this one here, I use my turntable, and with this one, the first application I put on it was a semi-gloss shine, doing the whole thing. And then I wrapped up the interior with paper towel, and I did a next coat with a matte finish, satin finish, because I wanted this to be I wanted the inside to be the dominant area, just to be the subordinate area. And in the final one, I covered everything again, and I used a gloss finish on for the top. So I don't know if you can see.
Is that a spray you use?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lacquer spray. The nice thing about lacquer spray is if you have any kind of runs or anything, you can just remove it with the thinner. You just paper towel, it takes it right off. You don't sand it. There's nothing.
Okay.
So I just wanted.
Maybe tip it this way towards me a little bit, just so I can see the inside part. Okay.
It's kind of dark. Yeah, I don't know how Alain Milan gets the wood here, but I'm really glad that he does. It comes in with the bark on and through the mail.
There. Now it's in focus.
Don, pull up the camera.
Yeah, the intent of this one was I wanted to make a tornado, and so I had to get the axis of the shaft itself. If it was straight, it wouldn't really look like a tornado at all. So I have an eccentric chuck, and I was able to not only turn it off center, but move it sideways as well. So then I drilled the hole through on the angle. Then I was able to turn it back and hollow it out on the first axis. Anyhow, the intent was to have the tornado, and then have it. This is all the debris that's being pulled up by the tornado.
Don, put it down.
Hey?
Just hold it up to the camera. And smile a little bit.
That's a smile.
Oh, really? On the inside.
Okay.
Oh, you wanted me to?
Yes. By the way, I have to double check the numbers at home, but I think we're at 18 so far for this year on Bravery Bead Pool.
Yeah, this is my Bravery bead box. I try to keep them quite simple. The lid is very loose, easy handle, full of hearts. So there's a whole lot of love for this person. The one thing on the inside, I don't know if you can see it in there, Dave.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, just a little bit right there. Yeah.
the point is there's a curve into it. There's no corner. So when the kid wants to get something in, they don't have to go and find it in the corner. It's just like a bowl inside, so they can just scoop it out. It's fairly thick, so if it's dropped, it'll probably stand a few abuses. And I just again, I just use a biography, make some butterflies, balloons, anything that's lighthearted.
You kept it simple.
Different, yeah, simple. Different types of flowers.
What's the wood?
The wood? I don't know, Nova Scotia deadwood. I don't know. It's, yeah, I really don't
Elmer
know.
butternut maybe, yeah.
Yeah, that works.
Take a vote.
Yeah, it's just, I think if you're, I take my hat off to people that make them by the multitudes. I just, it's not something that I do, I make one, I'm happy to make one. But I think the bottom, I think we might wanna take note that to make them like a bowl. Because I think in the corner, if the little kids, it might be hard to get those little beads out.
That's my age and I'm
Yeah,
busy.
Don, hold up the camera.
Do you want a butterfly or do you want a balloon?
Well, I guess butterfly.
Oh, the butterfly's done.
Butterfly?
Yeah, okay.
There's a butterfly.
Yeah,
That
smile.
smiles there.
Butterflies go on?
No,
Take my word.
no,
Oh, well, I can fool around with it.
might be enough light in there. There's enough light coming off Don's brilliance,
Ah, yeah.
you don't need the
There's a
flash.
halo right around here. You gotta hurry up, you're gonna get kicked out of here.
No, it's supposed to flash.
Where's your
Flash
flash?
is on.
Battery run.
I see.
Okay, Dave.
Yeah,
Well, no,
that's-
I had-